What's going on, Algebra Bros? It's Mr. C here, and in this video, we're going to boss up by reviewing some interval notation.
What?
So interval notation is basically a quick way of expressing an answer that has a lot of solutions coming off the number line. We typically encounter interval notation when solving inequalities.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
And in this video, I'm just going to go over some of the different scenarios that you can end up in. I'll illustrate how you can graph an inequality on a number line, as well as come up with the corresponding interval notation.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Soldier boy, tell.
So let's go ahead and dive in. So our first inequality is x is greater than a. And before we do the interval notation, I'd actually like to give a picture of this inequality by drafting up a number line here. And we don't know what a is specifically, so I'm just going to keep it generic. So since we're only comparing x to one value, and that's a, I'm going to go ahead and put one tick mark on the number line. Hopefully that doesn't tick anybody off. And I'm going to label that as the number a. Now keep in mind that this is x is greater than a, so what that means is that we want to include all the numbers on the number line that are greater than a, and those would fall to the right of a. And how many times can I say a, eh? Anyway, the numbers to the right of a would be all of this part of the number line, going from a all the way down to infinity. Now there's no bar underneath the inequality symbol, so because of that, I'm going to put a parenthesis on top of the tick mark for a and facing towards the direction of shading. So if we were to include a, there would be a bar, in which case we'd use a bracket. Now for the interval notation, it's always going to go smaller number, comma, bigger number. So in this situation, if I'm looking at the shaded area of the number line, the smaller number, so to speak, is a, so I'm going to jot that down, comma, and then the larger number, which technically isn't a number, it's more of an idea, that would be infinity, that's going to go after the comma.
That's quite big.
I'm going to use a parenthesis on a since we're not including it, and by default use a parenthesis on any type of infinity. That would be positive or negative infinity. And that would be the interval notation for x is greater than a.
Yeah, baby. That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
Okay, let's do x is less than a. So again, I'm going to draft up a number line, put a tick mark on it for a. This time we want all values of x that are less than a, and those would fall to the left of a on the number line. So I'm going to shade all the way towards the left, and that will continue on down to negative infinity. And because there's no bar underneath the inequality symbol, I'm going to use a parenthesis again, this time facing towards the left. Now reading this number line from left to right, the smaller of the two numbers is negative infinity, so I'm going to write that down, comma, the bigger number, which is a.
Do it now.
By default, parenthesis on negative infinity, and since there's a parenthesis on the number line where a is at, I'm going to surround a with a parenthesis as well. All right, let's keep this gravy train a-rolling. X is greater than or equal to a this time. So let's draft up a number line. Again, a tick mark for a. So this includes both the greater than symbol and this bar right here, meaning equal. So let's address the greater than part of it. So the values of x that are greater than a would go from a all the way down to infinity. And because there's a bar this time, we're going to bracket a, facing the direction of the shading. The smaller of the two numbers here is a, so we'll write a, comma, and then the larger of the two numbers is infinity. Now by default, parenthesis on the infinity, but now since there's a bracket along the tick mark for a, we're going to bracket a. All right. Okay, so x is less than or equal to a. Let's draft up a number line. Still comparing x to only one value, and that's a. The less than portion of it means that we'll shade to the left of A, going all the way down to negative infinity. And then the bar would mean that we're going to include A, so I'm going to put a bracket on A again, this time pointing towards the left. The smaller of the two numbers here is negative infinity, comma, the larger of the two numbers, which is A. By default, parenthesis on negative infinity, and you guessed it, a bracket on A. Not too bad, eh? All right. We're almost there.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap. No bullshit.
Okay. So now we're going to look at a compound inequality, and the reason why it's called compound is because we're comparing x to two values. Namely, we're having a being less than x, and at the same time, x being less than b. This is what's called an and compound inequality. Let's draft up a number line, and because we're comparing x to two values now, we're going to use two tick marks. A is assumed to be smaller than B, so I'll mark the left tick mark as A and the right tick mark as B. Now what I want you to notice is that X is between the values of A and B, visually speaking from the inequality. So what that means is we want to shade the part of the number line that's between A and B, so that would be this middle portion right here. Try that again. Okay, and looking at the inequality symbols, there's no bar underneath either of them. So because of that, we're going to use a parenthesis on A and a parenthesis on B. Let's come up with the interval notation. The smaller of the two numbers here is A, so I'll write down A, comma, and then the larger of the two numbers is B. And what do you think we'll have to put on both A and B, parenthesis or a bracket? We'll have to use a parenthesis for each of them. There we go. That's the interval notation for that inequality. All right, now there are going to be some slight variations here. As you can probably tell, we're going to have to use a bracket or two, depending on the bars here. And did you know that before bars were invented, or before crowbars were invented, most crows drank at home?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
All right, anyway, sorry about that. All right, let's draft up a number line. And we are comparing x to two values again. That would be A, we'll assume that's smaller, and then B, larger. X is still trapped between A and B, so that's where I'm going to shade on this number line, is between A and B. Notice that there's a bar associated with the value of A, so because of that, I'm going to put a bracket on A. There's no bar associated with the number B, so for that reason I'll use parenthesis. Here comes the interval notation. The smaller number is A, so A, comma, bigger number is B. We'll put a bracket on A and a parenthesis on B. This is called a half open interval, by the way.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
Here comes another half open interval. Let's draft up a number line. We'll put a tick mark for A and a tick mark for B. X is still trapped between A and B, so I'm going to shade between A and B. There's no bar associated with A this time, but there is a bar associated with B, so I'm going to put a parenthesis on A and a bracket on B.
Good.
And notice how I'm facing the parenthesis and bracket towards the shaded part of the number line. I know it's a small detail, but, you know, just in case anybody was wondering.
Yes.
Okay, the smaller number A, bigger number B, so let's write A, comma, B. Parenthesis on the A and bracket on the B. Okay, last one in the table.
Are you ready, kids?
We've got A is less than or equal to X, and x is less than or equal to b. Let's graft up a number line. 2 tick marks again, one for A, one for B. X is still trapped between A and B, so let's shade that part of the number line between A and B. And notice that there's a bar associated with both the values of A and B. So because of that, I'm going to put a bracket on both A and B. Smaller number, of course, is A. Larger number is B. So let's write A, comma, B, and then a bracket on each of these. And this would be an example of a closed interval. Let's do a little bit of overtime.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
I'm going to give you a number line to start things out with. And I want us to assume that the entire thing is shaded. So going from left to right, I'm going to start the shading down at negative infinity and go all the way across to the other side towards positive infinity. So what I'm indicating here is that we're including all values of x that are part of the number line. The interval notation for that would go as follows. The smaller number, if you will, is negative infinity, comma, the bigger number, which is positive infinity, and by default, parentheses on any type of infinity. This type of interval represents the set of all real numbers, aka double stick R.
What?
And it means, quite literally, all real
what are you
numbers.
talking about,
So
man?
any value of x that you can imagine would satisfy the inequality associated with this. Now, there might be some debate as to what the inequality looks like for it. This is the one that I usually go with. I'll write negative infinity is less than x is less than an infinity. And so this is saying shade all values of x that are between negative infinity and positive infinity. And notice how there are no bars underneath the inequality symbol underneath either of them. And that's because we can't bracket infinities.
Don't do that.
All right. So that's it. Hopefully you had a great time during this crash course of interval notation. Of course, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for hanging in there and bossing up with me. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Have a great day.